Everyone rejected the orphan, except one man who gave her his name and heart, white heavy check mark. But inside the orphanage, there was a quiet little girl who often felt invisible. Her name was Maya, though few people remembered to call her by it. She had soft brown eyes that always seemed to be searching for something, maybe a smile, maybe a friend, or maybe just someone to notice her. Maya had been at the orphanage for as long as she could remember. She didn't have memories of her parents, or of the warmth that came from a home. Each day seemed the same, waking up to the cold light of dawn, washing with the smallest amounts of water, eating breakfast that was barely enough to fill her stomach, and then joining the other children in the large, echoing hallways. The orphanage was crowded, and though there were many children, loneliness felt heavy on her small shoulders. She tried, every day, to be part of the group. Sometimes she joined in games, laughing quietly at jokes she didn't quite understand. Other times she helped the younger children with their chores, tying shoelaces or fetching water for them. But no matter what she did, she could feel it, an invisible wall that kept her apart. The other children often whispered behind her back or ignored her when she spoke. Even the caretakers seemed too busy to notice her, except when she made a mistake or spilled her food. Maya was learning, slowly, that sometimes the world was not kind to those who quietly tried to survive. Mornings were the hardest. As the sun peeked through the dusty windows, the orphanage seemed almost alive with noise and motion. Children chattered loudly, sharing stories of things they did with their families or dreams of places they wished to visit. Maya would sit at the corner of the breakfast hall, her small hands wrapped around a plain slice of bread. She listened, hoping to catch a kind word, a small acknowledgement, or even just a glance. But often her presence went unnoticed. She didn't mind being alone too much, because she had learned to keep her thoughts as her only friends. Her mind was full of stories she created to keep herself company, adventures in faraway lands, magical animals that talked to her, or gentle heroes who always came to help those in need. In those imaginary worlds, she was never lonely. Even though Maya felt the sharp sting of rejection often, she never gave up hope. Each day, she told herself that maybe today would be different. Maybe today someone would smile at her, or speak to her kindly, or even ask her what her name was. She imagined what it would feel like to be called by her name with warmth, to hear someone say, "I am glad you are here." It was a simple wish, but to Maya it was everything. The orphanage itself was a large, old building, with walls that had seen years of children grow and leave. The paint was chipped in places, and the floorboards creaked when anyone walked too quickly. In the evenings, the sounds of laughter outside would mix with the quiet sighs inside, reminding Maya of what she didn't have. But she also found little joys. She loved the moments when the sun shone through the tall windows, creating warm, golden patches on the cold floors. She liked the way birds sometimes perched on the windowsill, pecking curiously at crumbs or chirping their songs. Those small moments, simple as they were, gave her hope. They reminded her that beauty could exist even in places that felt cold and unwelcoming. Despite the harshness of her daily life, Maya had a kind heart. She shared her food with smaller children when no one was looking, tucked blankets around the youngest at night, and comforted anyone who cried. It was her way of making the world a little softer, a little more gentle. Sometimes, she wished that someone would do the same for her. She wondered what it would feel like to have a hand held over hers, to hear words that told her she mattered. In her quiet moments, she imagined what it would be like to have someone who truly cared, not just for her tasks or her obedience, but for her as a person. On one particular day, Maya sat by the edge of the playground, watching the other children play. Laughter and shouts filled the air, but she stayed in the corner, her small fingers picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. One boy ran past her, nearly knocking her over, but he didn't even notice her presence. She looked down, brushing dirt from her worn shoes, and sighed softly. "Maybe tomorrow," she whispered to herself, "someone will see me." Even in her disappointment, there was a spark of hope that refused to die. It was quiet, like a candle flickering in a storm, but it was there. Maya's life was not just about sadness. She found comfort in the little things. A stray cat that wandered near the orphanage, a kind word from the cook when he offered her an extra piece of bread, or a story she read in a tattered book she had found in the corner of the library. Those small moments were treasures to her, gems that she collected in her heart. They reminded her that even if the world often turned away, there were pieces of kindness hidden somewhere, waiting to be found. One evening, after a long day of chores and study, Maya sat on the steps outside the orphanage. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the cool breeze brushed against her face. She closed her eyes and imagined a life different from hers. In her dreams, she had a home filled with laughter, a warm bed, and someone who would always be there to listen. She imagined walking into a house where her presence was celebrated, where her name was said with love, and where no one ever rejected her. These dreams were fragile, delicate, and sometimes fleeting, but they were hers. They kept her moving forward, even when the world seemed harsh and unkind. As night fell, the orphanage grew quiet. Children settled into their beds, and the caretakers moved slowly through the halls, checking on each room. Maya lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft creaks and sighs of the old building. She thought about the day and all the moments she had wished for connection. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that many more days might be filled with loneliness. But she also knew that somewhere out there could be someone who would see her, truly see her and care. That thought, however faint, gave her a quiet strength. It whispered to her that she was not invisible, not entirely. There was hope, and hope was enough to keep her heart beating, to keep her believing that life could one day be brighter. Maya drifted to sleep with her thoughts dancing between the world she lived in and the one she imagined. In her dreams, she wandered through fields of flowers, met people who smiled at her, and found a place where she belonged. And though morning would bring the same old walls and routines, her dreams were a promise. That one day, someone would come who would give her the warmth, care, and love she had been searching for all her life. The days for Maya seemed to stretch endlessly. The orphanage had its routines, and every morning she faced the same struggles. She woke up early, her small frame shivering under the thin blanket, and went through the motions of washing, dressing, and eating. Breakfast was always a simple affair: stale bread, watery porridge, and the occasional piece of fruit when the cook remembered. But it was not the food that weighed on her. It was the feeling of being unnoticed, of being just another child among many. Maya tried, as always, to join the other children. She attempted to play games, to speak up during activities, and to show her talents quietly, hoping someone would notice. But the other children often ignored her or laughed when she tried. Sometimes they whispered behind her back, calling her names that hurt more than anything else. Even though she tried not to cry, the tears sometimes came, silently sliding down her cheeks while no one was looking. She learned to wipe them quickly and put on a brave face. She didn't want to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her sadness. It wasn't just the children who made her feel unwanted. The caretakers, though not cruel, were busy and distracted. They had many children to look after, and Maya often found herself lost in the shuffle. If she needed help, she had to wait patiently, sometimes for hours, until someone finally had a moment to notice her. She never complained, but the quiet disappointment in her eyes spoke volumes. She had long learned that asking too much often led to disappointment. One day, the orphanage received news that a family wanted to adopt a child. Excitement buzzed through the halls as names were called out. Maya's heart fluttered with hope. Maybe this time, it would be different. Maybe this time, someone would see her, not just as an orphan, but as a little girl with dreams, feelings, and a heart full of love. When the caretakers began the selection, Maya approached timidly, her small hand clutching the strap of her worn backpack. She looked up at the visitors, trying to catch their attention with a shy smile, but they barely glanced at her. One family shook their heads, saying she was too quiet. Another said she seemed too fragile for their active lifestyle. Each rejection fell on her like heavy stones, weighing down her small shoulders. She nodded politely, even though her heart ached. She understood. She had learned the harsh truth early. Sometimes, no matter how kind or good you were, people would not choose you. After the visitors left, Maya retreated to her favorite corner in the orphanage library. It was a small, dusty room with worn-out books stacked on creaky shelves. Here, she could be alone with her thoughts. She picked up a book she had read many times, tracing the letters with her fingers, imagining herself in the stories. In her mind, she was brave, loved, and never alone, but reality was never far behind. She closed the book and stared out of the window at the children playing outside, their laughter echoing through the yard. She wanted to join them, to feel part of something, but the fear of rejection held her back. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Maya faced more moments of rejection, failed attempts to make friends, missed chances for adoption, and small but painful slights from those around her. Yet, through it all, she never lost her quiet kindness. She shared her food with younger children, comforted those who cried, and performed small acts of care wherever she could. Sometimes, she wondered if anyone would ever notice her heart, the one that beat with hope even in the darkest moments. One afternoon, Maya was helping in the kitchen, carrying a small tray of bread to the dining hall. A younger boy stumbled and dropped his plate, spilling food everywhere. The other children laughed, and the caretakers sighed in frustration. Without hesitation, Maya knelt beside the boy, helping him pick up the pieces. "It's okay," she whispered softly, "accidents happen." The boy looked up at her with wide eyes, surprised that someone cared. For a brief moment, Maya felt a spark of connection. It was small, fleeting, but it reminded her that her kindness mattered, even if no one else seemed to notice. That evening, as the children settled into their beds, Maya lay awake, thinking about her place in the world. She wondered why she seemed to be invisible to everyone. Why did people reject her when she tried so hard to be good? She didn't understand, but she refused to let it break her spirit. She clutched her small blanket and whispered a promise to herself. One day, someone would see her, really see her, and they would care. Until then, she would keep being kind, keep being brave, and keep believing in the possibility of love. Maya's life was a mix of small joys and constant challenges. She loved the moments when the sun painted golden patterns on the orphanage walls, when birds perched on the windowsill, or when she found a new story in the dusty library. But these joys were always accompanied by the pain of being overlooked, of being passed by while others were chosen. She watched children leave the orphanage with their new families, their faces lit with excitement and hope, and felt a quiet ache in her chest. She wanted to feel that joy, to know what it was like to be wanted and loved. One particularly difficult day, Maya tried to join a group activity in the yard. She approached the children slowly, hoping to play along, but they waved her away, saying there were too many players already. She stood there for a moment, frozen and uncertain, before retreating quietly to a nearby tree. She sat beneath its branches, tracing patterns in the dirt with her fingers, feeling the familiar sting of loneliness. Tears threatened to fall, but she blinked them back, remembering her promise to herself. She would not give up hope. Even in the face of repeated rejection, Maya's spirit remained strong. She had learned to find beauty in small things, to celebrate tiny victories, and to hold onto the hope that her life could change. She imagined a day when someone would come into her world and see her for who she truly was. She pictured a kind man or woman, someone who would give her a name, a home, and a heart full of love. These thoughts sustained her, like a light in the darkness, guiding her through each day. As winter approached, the orphanage became even colder and more difficult to bear. The nights were long, and the thin blankets did little to keep the chill away. Maya huddled close to herself, imagining warmth and comfort that seemed so far out of reach. She thought about the families she had seen leave, the children who had been chosen, and the life she had always dreamed of. Though sadness lingered, her hope never wavered. She knew that somewhere, beyond the walls of the orphanage, there could be someone who would choose her, someone who would love her just for being Maya. One evening, as snow gently fell outside, Maya found a small notebook tucked away in the library. She opened it and began to write, pouring her thoughts and feelings onto the pages. She wrote about her dreams, her fears, and her longing for a family. She wrote about the kindness she tried to show others, even when they ignored her. Writing became her refuge, a place where she could express herself freely, without fear of judgment or rejection. As she wrote, she felt a sense of peace, knowing that even if the world didn't notice her, her words and her heart were real. Maya's life at the orphanage was far from easy. Every day brought challenges, moments of rejection, and feelings of being invisible. But she faced each day with quiet courage, finding strength in her small acts of kindness, her vivid imagination, and her unwavering hope. She had learned that the world could be harsh, but it could also hold unexpected moments of beauty and connection. And deep down, she believed that one day, someone would come who would see her, love her, and give her a life filled with warmth and belonging. As the night drew on, Maya lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling and imagining what the future might hold. She pictured a kind man or woman, someone who would take her hand and tell her she was important. She imagined a home filled with laughter, a warm bed, and a life where she no longer felt invisible. And though sleep eventually claimed her, her heart held onto that hope, like a small flame flickering in the darkness. It was hope that had carried her this far, and it was hope that would carry her forward, toward the day when someone would finally give her the love she had been waiting for all her life. Spring was arriving, and the orphanage grounds were slowly coming to life with colors and sounds. Flowers peeked through the soil, and the chirping of birds filled the quiet mornings. For Maya, the changing season brought a sense of possibility, a faint hope that life could be different. She noticed the small miracles around her, the way a bee hovered over a flower, the sunlight glinting off the puddles left by rain, and for a moment the cold feeling of loneliness seemed lighter. Yet her heart still longed for someone to truly notice her, someone who could see past the quiet, timid girl and recognize the kind, thoughtful soul she had nurtured inside. One day, the orphanage received an unexpected visitor. A man came, tall and gentle, with kind eyes that seemed to look at everything carefully. His presence was quiet but commanding, as if he carried warmth wherever he went. The caretaker welcomed him politely, explaining that he was visiting to volunteer and perhaps see if there was a child he felt a connection with. The other children whispered excitedly to each other, some curious, some wary. Maya, however, stayed in her usual corner, observing silently. She didn't know why, but she felt drawn to him in a way she couldn't explain. Something about his calm demeanor and gentle smile made her heart feel lighter, as if hope was peeking through the cloud of loneliness that had followed her for so long. At first, the man spent his time helping the caretakers organize books and supplies. He moved with patience, talking softly to the children who approached him. Maya watched from a distance, her small hands twisting the hem of her dress nervously. She wanted to speak to him, to ask him questions or even just say hello, but the fear of being ignored held her back. She had been rejected so many times that even the thought of trying made her stomach ache. Still, there was something different about this man. Unlike the others, he didn't rush past her or overlook her presence. He seemed to notice her, even from afar, and that made her heart flutter with cautious hope. The next day, the man returned, carrying a few books with him. The caretaker suggested that he spend some time reading to the children, and soon a small group gathered around him. Maya, hesitant at first, edged closer until she was sitting quietly in the back. The man's voice was soft and warm as he read stories about faraway lands, brave heroes, and kind hearts. Maya's eyes widened with wonder. For the first time, she felt herself being included, even if it was just through the magic of a story. She listened intently, imagining herself as one of the characters who was brave, loved, and never alone. After reading, the man noticed Maya sitting quietly at the edge of the group. He knelt down to her level and spoke gently. "Hello," he said. "What's your name?" His voice was kind, without any judgment or expectation. Maya's heart raced. She had been asked her name before, of course, but it was often met with disinterest. She hesitated, unsure if she should answer, but something in his eyes, something warm and patient, encouraged her to speak. "Maya," she whispered softly. "Maya," he repeated, smiling gently. "That's a beautiful name." The words felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Maya's chest tightened with a mix of disbelief and joy. Someone had noticed her. Someone had said her name with care, as if it mattered. She nodded shyly, unsure of what to say next. Over the following days, the man continued to visit. He always made time to greet Maya, asking her simple questions about her day, her favorite books, and the stories she loved. At first, she responded cautiously, her words few and quiet. But gradually she began to open up, sharing little bits of her life, her dreams, and even the small worries she carried in her heart. He listened patiently, never rushing her, never judging her. In his presence, Maya felt safe, as if she could finally breathe without fear of rejection. One afternoon, the man brought a small notebook for Maya. "Here," he said gently, handing it to her. "You can write anything you want. Stories, thoughts, dreams, whatever is in your heart." Maya's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever given her such a gift before, a gesture that said, without words, "You matter." She clutched the notebook to her chest, feeling a warmth she had never known. That night, she wrote for hours, pouring her thoughts and emotions onto the pages, feeling lighter and freer than she ever had before. The bond between Maya and the man grew slowly but surely. He noticed the small ways she showed kindness to others, the careful attention she gave to younger children, and the gentle way she spoke to animals and plants alike. He praised her quietly, not in a way that drew attention, but in a way that told her he truly saw her. For Maya, this recognition was like water to a parched plant. She felt herself growing stronger, more confident, and more hopeful with each passing day. It wasn't long before other children and caretakers began to notice the connection as well. Some were surprised, even skeptical, that Maya, the quiet, often overlooked girl, was receiving so much attention from the kind man. But Maya didn't care about their whispers or doubts. She only cared about the moments when he spoke to her, when he laughed at her small jokes, and when he listened to her dreams as if they were the most important things in the world. In his presence, she began to believe that she could have a life beyond the orphanage, a life filled with love and acceptance. One rainy afternoon, Maya sat by the window, watching the raindrops race each other down the glass. The man joined her, bringing a warm blanket and a cup of cocoa. "It's a bit chilly today," he said softly. Maya smiled faintly, wrapping the blanket around herself. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the rain. It was one of those simple, quiet moments that felt extraordinary to Maya. She realized that someone cared enough to share time with her, to make her feel warm and safe, even when the world outside seemed indifferent. As weeks turned into months, the man continued to visit regularly. He brought new books, small treats, and little surprises that made Maya's heart swell with joy. More importantly, he continued to treat her with respect and kindness, always acknowledging her thoughts and feelings. Maya began to trust him completely, confiding in him about her fears, her loneliness, and her hopes for the future. He listened, always patient, never dismissive, offering gentle guidance and unwavering support. Maya's life began to change in small but significant ways. She walked a little taller, smiled a little more, and spoke a little louder. She began to believe in herself, in her own worth, and in the possibility that she could one day have the family and love she had always dreamed of. Yet, despite the happiness she felt, a part of her remained cautious. She had been rejected so many times that the fear of disappointment still lingered. But the man's constant presence, his genuine care, and his patience gradually chipped away at that fear, replacing it with hope. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Maya and the man sat together under the large oak tree in the yard. She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known. He gently stroked her hair and whispered, "You are special, Maya. Never forget that." Maya's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of overwhelming gratitude and joy. For the first time in her life, she truly felt seen. She felt loved. She felt that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change forever. That night, as she lay in her bed, Maya clutched the small notebook he had given her. She wrote down every thought, every feeling, every hope that had blossomed in her heart since he had appeared in her life. She wrote about the kindness he had shown, the warmth he had brought, and the hope that now seemed possible. For the first time, her dreams didn't feel like distant, fragile things. They felt real. They felt within reach. Maya had faced so many days of rejection, so many moments of loneliness and despair, yet here she was, slowly discovering that love could exist even for her. The man's presence was not just comforting, it was transformative. He had shown her that someone could care, that someone could notice her heart, and that someone could believe in her when the world had not. It was a lesson she would carry with her forever, a memory that would guide her through the challenges still to come. And so, Maya's life took a turn. The quiet girl who had once felt invisible began to blossom under the gentle care of a man who had seen her for who she truly was. She discovered the power of being seen, of being valued, and of being loved. Though the journey was far from over, the first threads of a brighter, warmer future were being woven. And in her heart, Maya knew that she had finally found someone who could give her the love and acceptance she had always longed for, a person who would change her life forever, just by seeing her, acknowledging her, and sharing his heart with her. Spring had fully arrived, and the orphanage was alive with colors, sounds, and the subtle energy of new beginnings. Maya had grown more confident in the weeks since the kind man had first arrived. His presence was no longer a rare moment of warmth. It had become a steady light in her life. She now looked forward to his visits with a quiet excitement, her heart lifting each time she heard the familiar sound of his footsteps on the old wooden floors. She had learned to smile without fear, to speak without hesitation, and to hope without holding back. The man, whose name was Daniel, had also come to understand Maya in ways that few others could. He noticed every small detail, the way she carefully tucked younger children's blankets around them, the gentle way she spoke to animals that wandered into the orphanage yard, and the sparkle in her eyes when she discovered something new. Every day he saw more of her kindness, intelligence, and strength, and with each passing moment, his admiration for her deepened. He knew, quietly but firmly, that Maya deserved more than the cold routines of the orphanage. She deserved a life filled with love, care, and stability, a life where she would no longer feel invisible. One afternoon, Daniel called Maya to the side, gently taking her hand. "Maya," he said softly, "I want to talk to you about something important." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had learned to expect kindness, but this tone carried a seriousness that made her both nervous and curious. She nodded, her small fingers clutching his hand tightly. "I have been thinking," Daniel continued, "about how much I care about you and how much I want to be a part of your life, not just for a few hours or days, but for always." Maya's eyes widened, her heart beating faster. She had imagined what it might feel like to have someone truly care for her, but hearing it aloud felt like a dream she had been waiting for all her life. Daniel knelt beside her and looked into her eyes with unwavering warmth. "Maya," he said, "I want you to come live with me. I want to give you a home, a family, and my heart. I want you to have a life where you are never alone, never rejected, and always loved. Will you come with me?" Maya felt a wave of emotions crash over her: joy, disbelief, excitement, and a touch of fear. She had been let down so many times that trusting this moment felt almost impossible. But the sincerity in Daniel's eyes, the calm assurance in his voice, and the steady kindness he had shown her from the very beginning told her that this time, things were different. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "I will come with you." At that moment the orphanage seemed to fade away. All the loneliness, all the days of feeling invisible, melted into a memory as she realized that she was finally being seen, finally being chosen. Daniel smiled, his own eyes misting slightly as he gently embraced her. "Welcome to your new life, Maya," he said. "Welcome home." The preparations for her new life began in quiet but joyful ways. Daniel worked with the caretakers to ensure that all the legal steps were completed, explaining everything to Maya in a way she could understand. He told her that she would be given his last name, a symbol that she was no longer just an orphan, but a part of his family. Maya felt a mixture of pride and happiness. She had never had a name spoken with such love and care, and now it would be hers in every way that mattered. On the day she was to leave the orphanage, Maya packed her small belongings carefully. Each item held memories: the worn-out book she loved, the small notebook Daniel had given her, a few personal items she had collected over the years. She wanted to bring pieces of her past with her, but she was ready to step into a future filled with hope. As she walked through the hallways one last time, she noticed the children playing outside, some waving shyly, others curious about her departure. Maya smiled, a genuine smile, feeling a sense of closure for the life she was leaving behind. Daniel arrived to take her home, waiting with the car in the courtyard. He knelt beside her, taking her hand again. "Are you ready?" he asked. Maya nodded, her heart full of anticipation and gratitude. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady with determination and joy. He lifted her gently into the car, and as they drove away, Maya looked back at the orphanage one final time. She whispered a quiet goodbye to the walls that had been her home for so long, knowing that she was leaving behind loneliness and stepping into love. Her new home with Daniel was warm, bright, and filled with the kind of love she had only dreamed about. The rooms were cozy, the beds soft and inviting, and the shelves lined with books, toys, and art supplies. Daniel had prepared the space carefully, thinking of every detail to make Maya feel welcome. There were flowers on the windowsill, soft blankets, and a little desk for her to write and draw. Maya's eyes filled with tears of happiness as she explored her new surroundings. For the first time, she felt the safety and warmth of a home that was truly hers. Over the following days, Maya began to settle into her new life. Daniel was patient, never rushing her to adjust, always giving her space while also offering guidance and support. They shared meals together, read stories, went for walks, and talked about anything and everything. Maya discovered a sense of belonging she had never known, and Daniel watched with quiet joy as she blossomed before his eyes. The shy, quiet girl who had once felt invisible was now confident, curious, and full of life. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Daniel handed Maya a small frame. Inside was a photograph of the two of them smiling, with the words written beneath, "Maya, now and always, part of my heart and my family." Maya's eyes sparkled with tears as she hugged the frame close. She realized fully and completely that she had found the love she had longed for all her life. Not just temporary kindness, but a permanent, unwavering bond that would never be broken. As weeks turned into months, Maya's life continued to transform. She excelled in school, made new friends, and discovered talents she had never explored before. She painted, wrote stories, and played music, encouraged by Daniel's constant support. Her laughter filled the house, a sound that had been missing for far too long. And through it all, Daniel remained by her side, not just as a guardian, but as a loving father who had chosen her with his heart. Maya's journey had not been easy. The days of loneliness, rejection, and invisible pain had shaped her, teaching her resilience, compassion, and hope. But now, with Daniel's love, she learned that her past did not define her. She could be happy, cherished, and valued for exactly who she was. The bond between them grew stronger each day, rooted in trust, understanding, and the quiet joy of shared lives. One afternoon, Maya sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Daniel joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You've come so far, Maya," he said softly. She leaned against him, feeling the steady warmth of his presence. "I know," she replied, a smile playing on her lips, "and I'm ready for all the days to come." Daniel smiled, squeezing her shoulder gently. "And I will be with you through every one of them," he said. Maya's life had changed completely. The orphan who had once felt invisible, rejected by everyone, now had a name, a home, and a heart full of love. She had discovered that one person's kindness could change everything, that love could transform even the loneliest hearts. And in the quiet moments, she would often think back to the days at the orphanage, the challenges, the tears, and the small sparks of hope, and realize that they had all led her to this moment of happiness and belonging. As night fell, Maya wrote in her notebook, recording her thoughts, her dreams, and her gratitude. She wrote about Daniel, about the home that now belonged to her, and about the love she finally knew. And as she closed the notebook, she felt a profound sense of peace. Her life, once filled with rejection and loneliness, was now filled with warmth, hope, and the kind of love she had always imagined but never dared to believe could be hers. Time passed gently, like a soft river carrying Maya into a life she had once only imagined in her dreams. Each day with Daniel brought new experiences, laughter, and a sense of belonging that she had never known. The shy, quiet girl who had once felt invisible was now thriving, discovering the many ways her heart could grow in the warmth of love and care. The house was filled with sounds of her joy, her laughter ringing through the halls, her music flowing from the piano, and the stories she created and shared with Daniel and their friends. Maya's mornings began differently now. She woke to sunlight streaming through her windows, the warmth brushing her face and filling her with energy. She no longer felt the chill of loneliness or the fear of being overlooked. Breakfast was a time of conversation, a simple routine transformed into a moment of connection. Daniel and Maya would sit together, discussing plans for the day, sharing dreams, or laughing over small jokes. Sometimes he would ask about her thoughts on a story she had read or a drawing she had made. The ordinary moments now felt extraordinary because each one was infused with care and attention, a care that Maya had longed for all her life. School became a place of opportunity and excitement. Maya, once shy and hesitant, now approached her studies with confidence and curiosity. She made friends with ease, sharing her stories and ideas openly. Her teachers noticed her intelligence, creativity, and thoughtfulness, praising her gently and encouraging her to explore her talents. For the first time, Maya experienced the joy of learning without fear of rejection. She realized that her mind and heart had always been full of potential. It just needed someone to nurture it. Daniel was always there, cheering her on, attending school events, helping with homework, and offering advice whenever she needed it. His pride in her accomplishments was steady and genuine, a mirror to the way he had always seen her inner beauty. Weekends became a time for adventure. Daniel and Maya explored parks, museums, and libraries, always discovering something new. Sometimes they would take long walks in the countryside, talking about the sky, the trees, and the dreams that lived quietly in their hearts. Maya had begun to trust the world in ways she never thought possible. She no longer feared rejection, because she had learned what it felt like to be truly accepted. Daniel's unwavering support gave her courage to try new things, to explore her talents, and to embrace life fully. The house itself became a reflection of their shared lives. Maya decorated her room with drawings, photos, and little mementos that held meaning for her. There was a corner for reading, a space for writing stories, and a small shelf for her favorite books. Daniel encouraged her creativity, sometimes joining her in writing stories or drawing pictures. Their home was more than a building. It was a place of love, warmth, and belonging, a stark contrast to the cold, lonely orphanage that had once been Maya's entire world. Maya also discovered a deep sense of empathy. Her own experiences with rejection and loneliness had shaped her into a compassionate, thoughtful individual. She often volunteered to help other children, sharing her time, her knowledge, and her heart. Daniel encouraged this, reminding her that kindness was one of the most powerful gifts a person could give. Maya found joy in making others feel seen and loved, just as she had been made to feel. Her life had come full circle. She was no longer just a recipient of care, but a giver of it as well. There were quiet moments, too. Even with all the happiness and love, Maya sometimes reflected on her past. She remembered the days in the orphanage, the isolation, the rejections, and the small sparks of hope that had carried her through. These memories were bittersweet, but they made her stronger. She realized that her struggles had taught her resilience, empathy, and the value of genuine love. And now, with Daniel by her side, those struggles became the foundation for a life filled with gratitude, purpose, and joy. One summer evening, as they watched the sun set from their porch, Maya spoke softly. "Daniel," she said, "I used to feel like no one would ever notice me. But now I feel like I can be anything, do anything, and I am never alone." Daniel smiled, his eyes filled with warmth and pride. "That's because you are strong, Maya," he replied, "and because you allowed yourself to trust love. You've grown in ways that no one else could have helped you with except through your own courage and heart. I'm just grateful to walk beside you." Maya leaned against him, feeling the steady reassurance of his presence. As the years went by, Maya continued to thrive. She developed talents in writing, art, and music, encouraged by Daniel and the nurturing environment of her home. Her creativity flourished, each story she wrote and each drawing she made reflecting her inner world, now vibrant and full of life. Daniel always reminded her of the importance of believing in herself, of holding on to hope, and of using her gifts to bring joy to others. Maya learned that she could make a difference in the world, not just through achievements, but through the love and kindness she shared. The bond between Maya and Daniel deepened into one of mutual respect, trust, and love. He had become more than a guardian. He was a father, a mentor, and a best friend. He celebrated her successes, comforted her fears, and shared in her dreams. For Maya, having Daniel in her life meant never having to wonder if she was valued or loved. She knew, beyond any doubt, that she had a place in the world where she belonged completely. Maya also maintained connections with the orphanage. She would occasionally return to visit, bringing books, supplies, and small gifts for the children who still lived there. She shared her stories, her successes, and her journey with them, quietly inspiring hope in hearts that had once felt invisible. Daniel always encouraged these visits, understanding that Maya's past had shaped the compassionate, empathetic person she had become. Through her actions, Maya showed that love and care could create ripples, touching the lives of many others. As Maya grew older, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this point. From the lonely corners of the orphanage to a home filled with love, she had transformed in ways she had once thought impossible. She realized that life could be harsh and unkind, but it could also hold incredible beauty and warmth when someone chose to see your heart. Daniel had not just given her a home, he had given her a sense of self-worth, a belief in love, and the courage to embrace life fully. One quiet evening, as they sat together watching the stars appear in the sky, Maya spoke again. "I used to think I would never be wanted," she said softly. "But now I understand. Love can find you, even when you feel invisible. And sometimes one person's heart can change everything." Daniel smiled, taking her hand in his. "And that person, Maya, is you too. Your heart has always been full of love. You just needed someone to help you see it." Maya squeezed his hand, feeling the truth of his words resonate deep within her. The years continued, filled with milestones, achievements, and simple joys. Maya graduated from school with honors, pursued her passions in writing and art, and nurtured friendships that were meaningful and lasting. Through it all, Daniel remained by her side, offering guidance, support, and unconditional love. Maya had learned that family was not just about blood, but about heart, presence, and devotion. She had found a family that chose her, embraced her, and nurtured her in ways she had once only dreamed of. Looking back, Maya often reflected on the long journey she had traveled. She remembered the orphanage, the rejections, the quiet tears, and the small sparks of hope that had carried her through. She remembered the first moment Daniel had noticed her, the gentle conversations, the gifts of books and attention, and finally, the day he gave her his heart and her name. Each memory was a testament to resilience, courage, and the transformative power of love. Maya's life had become a story of hope for anyone who had ever felt invisible, rejected, or unloved. She knew that even in the darkest moments, one person's kindness could make all the difference. She had experienced it firsthand, and now she dedicated her life to sharing that light with others. Her heart, once fragile and unsure, had grown strong, compassionate, and full of love, a reflection of the one who had chosen her when no one else would. And so Maya's story reached a place of peace, fulfillment, and joy. The orphan who had once felt invisible had become a young woman filled with hope, courage, and love. She had been chosen, seen, and cherished by Daniel, who had given her more than a home. He had given her a life where she belonged, where her heart could flourish, and where she could finally embrace happiness without fear. Maya had discovered the truth that she had always longed to believe, that love, patience, and kindness could change everything, and that one heart could make the world brighter for another. As Maya looked up at the stars one night, sitting beside Daniel and feeling the warmth of home, she whispered softly to herself, "I am loved, I am seen, I am home." And in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that her journey, long, difficult, and filled with hope, had led her to exactly where she was meant to be.